Hi, and welcome to College Planning Untangled, where we help simplify the college planning process for our families. I'm Kristin Clark. I'm a career exploration coach for 16 to 28-year-olds. Call them your emerging adults. And I'm here with Bobby Hood, our SAT ACT guru. And Bobby, we're talking about a subject near and dear to your heart today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the topic today is how often should you take the SAT and ACT? Like, which one should you take? How do you figure that out? What kind of score you should get? That sort of thing, right?
Yeah, so let's dive in. First, I think the most important question right now is which one should you take, just to level set
Yeah,
everybody?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a tricky question because this is something that a lot of the reason we do this show is like there's so much misinformation out there. And I mean, I literally just had yesterday a parent call me and say, well, okay, we've been working on the ACT for 4 months, but now the college counselor told my kid that you should just take the SAT instead because like everybody takes like because the ACT is being taken by all these kids who are getting like lots of extra time, and the SAT is not like that. So it's better to take the SAT, and that it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, let's
And it
get
was,
that
and I was like, no, I mean, just as
cleaned
many
up.
students have accommodations on both tests. And so the simple answer is, I mean, you should take whichever test you feel more comfortable with, and you're going to get a higher score on, right? And for a while, the tests were very like similar, and then they were kind of different. And so the simple answer has always been just take a practice test for each test and see how you score, right? And then there are you can look up, just type in ACT SAT score conversion and look and see how those two scores compare, right? The new thing is with the new digital SAT, I have steered students toward the ACT pretty heavily for the past sort of 7 years or so, because I found that more students were able to improve more quickly on the ACT. Now we have this brand new digital adaptive SAT that is shorter. And so the fact that the new SAT is only 2 hours long to take instead of 3.5 hours, and the fact that it has short reading passages instead of long reading passages, means that the digital SAT, the new digital SAT, is probably going to feel a lot easier, and a lot more accessible to a lot of students. So the answer is try them both, right? And see how you score on each one, right? Because it is pretty straightforward that like if your score is noticeably higher on one of them, that means you've got a better aptitude for that test, and you're very likely to be able to improve more quickly on that test. But the main thing is, what a lot of people do is say, well, I'm going to sign my kid up for an ACT and an SAT to get a starting score and see how it is. And that's 2 Saturdays where your kid has to get up at 7 a.m. and go take a test that you're not going to use the score for. That's a terrible idea, right?
Right. So you might as well just do the practice, right?
Take the practice at home, do your best to kind of make it similar to test conditions, but that's it, right? Just take it at home. And so that's part of what this conversation is. It's like, you should just only take the test when you're ready to take the test, right? And when you know what score you're going to get. And that's what my whole thought process is about for students.
All right. So how often should they take the assessment or the test?
Yeah. So, I mean, if a parent comes to me before their student has ever touched anything on the SAT or ACT, what I say is, okay, take a practice test to figure out that this is the test that you're good with working on. Meet with me. We review the test. I show you strategies. Then most students need to take about 5 tests practicing the strategies at home. And so what I say is, keep taking the test at home until you've gotten a nice big score improvement, until you are consistently scoring at your highest potential score every time. And then you'll
Bobby,
know what score you're going to get when you walk in and take the real test, right?
Right, but we've talked about this before. It's kind of like muscle memory, where once they've taken that test several times, it's a benefit for several reasons, right? Number one, they're getting better at it because they're practicing and have that muscle memory that happens when they walk in. They're less stressed because they know what to expect.
Yes.
And what else? What am I missing?
Well, no, that's the thing to me is like, so the first few times you take the test, it's intimidating because you don't know what's going to be on there. And it's also exhausting because you have to sit there for hours, right? And then once you've taken it a bunch of times, then you aren't intimidated anymore. So you're kind of, I call it like bored, but focused, right? You're like, okay, I know how to do this. I'm not scared by it anymore. And I'm just going to go do it. And I'm going to go get the same score I've gotten every time. Because until you've got that consistency, what happens is you can have various kinds of test day freak out, right? Where you're pressuring yourself or you feel like it's really important, right? Or you see other people and you feel like they're doing better than you or whatever, right?
Well, and we've talked about test anxiety, and that's a big reason for it because you're not comfortable. You don't know what to expect. So by practice at home in a comfortable place that you feel good about, then the only difference you have when you walk into another room is it's a different room.
Absolutely, right. And so what I say to a lot of students is like, okay, in a perfect world, you would take 5 practice tests at home and you would get completely consistent at your highest score and all of that, right? Now, in the real world, maybe not every student's going to do that, right? And so what I say to a lot of students is say, okay, look, you've done some work. You haven't taken as many tests as I'd like for you to take, but okay, you're going to take the test in a couple of weeks. Go score a 28 or 29 on that test, lock that score in, and then go and a couple of months later, continue practicing and then go get a 32, right? Like, but you've got this other score locked in, right? And that's a reasonable thing to do too. What you want to avoid is just taking the test over and over and over and over again without doing enough preparation, right?
Yeah. Because let's face it, it's a whip. You said that, getting up Saturday morning, bright and early, driving there, all the stuff. So, okay.
Absolutely. And I think what happens with a lot of students too is like they take a test, they meet with me, they review some strategies, I tell them some strategies, and they think, oh, cool, I know the strategies now, I'm good, right? And then they go take the real test and they don't score as high as they thought they were going to. And then they realize, oh, okay, I do actually have to work at this, right? Yeah. And then they go do the work and then they get the score, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking the ACT or the SAT 3 times or 4 times. There's nothing wrong with it at all, right? Schools aren't going to look down at you for doing that. You don't have to submit all your scores. Like you can choose which scores you submit to schools and all that. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way I look at it is at some point, every student, no matter how motivated, at some point, they're just going to get burned out and say, I've spent enough time on this. I can't spend any more time on this. Yeah. Right. Yep. And so the goal is to get in and out and get done before that burnout happens.
Well, and it's interesting, Bobby. So when I have clients come to me, a lot of times they will put off working with me on the figuring out a career path so that they understand what education path they need to go down to because they're super focused right that minute on the SAT or ACT testing, which I applaud because I'm like, put all your effort into that one thing, knock it out, get it done, and move on. And don't belabor that over months and months and months. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And so that's the thing is basically, that's the other thing that I do in tutoring is say, like, if a student comes in and they're starting from scratch, on average, students they need to take about 5 tests practice. That's about 15 hours of work. And they probably, on average, students meet with me for 4 to 6 hours, typically, right? 20% of my students get done in less than 4 hours. 20% take more than 6 hours. The rest of them meet with me for 4 to 6 hours and then take, somewhere around, do about 10 to 15 hours of work at home. So that's like a total in of about 20 hours of work. And, I don't know what much about the tutoring industry, but that's not how it works mostly in the tutoring industry, right? Tutors want students to sign up for packages of 25 or 50 hours and meet twice a week for months and months and months. And it's just, and another 50 hours of homework. And I mean, students don't have the time or the motivation for all that,
Yeah,
and they don't
Bobby,
need it.
nobody has that. Let's
Right.
face it. I mean, it's too much.
Right. And I mean,
Yeah.
and so I think it's a lot of, it's just a lot more hours than are needed. I know that I'm definitely more efficient, one of the most efficient tutors around with the way I do that, but I feel very strongly that like you don't need to do more than is necessary. Excuse me.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, then, one other thing that we wanted to talk about is what's a good score for SAT and a good score for ACT? And then
That's
I'm going to get on
such
my
a good question.
soapbox, so let's
Oh
just
yeah,
go.
absolutely. Well, so yeah, the thing is, I mean, there is like as tutors, we avoid trying to try to steer away from the words "good score," but of course, that's what people say. But it's like the one of the traditional things to say is like a good score is a score that represents you and your abilities and will get you into a college where you will be competitive and happy. Right? That's the simple answer.
Well, and
Right?
Bobby, it's the right answer,
Right.
right? Because, here's my soapbox.
Mhm.
How do you know what a good score is if you don't know what college you want to go to? And how do
Right.
you know what college you want to go to if you don't know what you're trying to get out of it? So
Exactly.
by starting this process and going, all right, here's my plan. I'm
Mhm.
interested in this type of career.
Mhm.
Based on that, I want to go to this school or this grouping of schools, possibly because they either have the major that I need to accomplish
Mhm.
that goal, or they're known for that
Yep.
major, or they're known for getting people that graduate with that degree into work,
Mhm.
into an actual job, like they're known for that. Then a good score is what's going to get you into that school,
Absolutely.
and what's going to get you if you're looking for merit scholarships, what's
Mhm.
going to get you that. So I mean, there's kind of an order that you should go in, right?
Absolutely right. To start with, what's a good score? What's my score goal? Is putting the cart before the horse, or whatever you call it, right? And
Yeah.
and it is like in a much more practical standpoint. I mean, so many of my students, live in Texas, and they decide that they want to go to Oklahoma or to Arkansas or to whichever state school in a state nearby, and many schools nowadays, particularly like public state schools, but almost all schools now post certain defined scholarship or defined things where if you have this GPA and this ACT score or SAT score, then you can get in-state tuition or you can get this amount of scholarship. And so much of my tutoring is my student has a 27, and if they get a 29, then they get in-state tuition at this
Yeah.
other school,
That's why
and
we
that will
hired
save
you.
and that'll save us $60,000 or whatever. And so in that case, a good score is the score that gets you that defined scholarship, whatever. But
Yeah.
but it is amazing that just in situations like that, 1 point difference or 2 points difference on your ACT can change your college bill by a six-figure sum.
Yeah.
That's crazy, but that's the world we live in, right? And so go and do that research is the thing, right? And go find out, okay, here are the kind of schools we're looking at. Here's the kind of school we need. Go take a practice test, see where you are. And let's say, if you take a practice test and you score a 23 on the ACT, like on average, ACT and College Board claim that test prep cannot change scores at all, or can change them only by 1 point or something. On average, a lot of people in the tutoring industry will say that like students who take classes and things like that will improve, possibly like if they do all the homework, take a bunch of practice tests and all that, will improve about 3 points on the ACT, right? And so if you had, say, a 23, it might be reasonable to aim for a goal of a 26, and you should be happy if you're able to get there, right? And in my tutoring, what I say is my goal is to see that 3 point improvement on your second test, right? And then let's go for much more improvement. Like, let's go for unreasonable levels of improvement. And many of my students do that and improve 5 or 7 points, and
Yeah.
and in that quick time period. And that's what's like sets me apart as able to get students through the process and really get those results. I think the idea of being wedded to like one score or this is all I can achieve or whatever, I just tell students, like, the sky's the limit. There's so much of these tests is just how you feel and think about the test, right? You don't
Yeah,
actually
for
have to
sure.
know anything. You just need to relax, stop thinking so hard, and know the patterns of the test. And students can see enormous, enormous improvements and get those scores that will get them those really great, like
Yeah.
things. But
And
when you circle back, it really is all figuring out what's your career path, what college you want to go to. Is college even the right thing for me? Right? Should I take a year before I go to college? Right? Should I take a gap year? Am I not prepared right now to succeed? Because if
hey,
you don't do
Bobby,
all that, right, you get in trouble.
tell me this. If a student does decide to take a gap year, is it
Mhm.
still best for them to do the ACT, SAT while they're in high school, or should they wait?
Absolutely. No, they should
Okay.
get that test done because the scores will still apply for several years.
Okay.
And man,
And do it while you're immersed.
you don't
Yeah.
want to get any farther away from math. The farther you get away from your high school math classes, the harder and harder the math side of the test is going to get.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So go
Okay.
ahead and get
Good
it
deal.
knocked out. All right. That's it.
All right. Good deal. And guys, I put in the stream our college planning timeline. I'm telling you, it's the
Yeah.
simplest timeline out there on the market. And
Yeah.
Bobby, I will see you next week.